Welcome back, Pete. We are another episode of Two Sides of the Table. What have you been up to?
Yeah, Carl, it's been a fantastic couple of weeks actually, and it's awesome to be back here in the studio across the other side of the table. And it is definitely well and truly conference season at the moment. And we were just talking off mic before about everyone's travel schedule with all of the conferences and events coming up. And I was lucky enough to be in San Francisco last week and immerse myself in all things HubSpot. So we're using that deeply in digital teams. So that's where my head's been at. And what have you been up to over the last few weeks?
We have been going through an office move. So we are well and truly in the depths of moving desks and setting up new desks and moving computers. And the team's been sort of working from home while we get the office set up. So it's been quite a journey. We had a bit of an issue last week where we hired someone to come and build some desks. And unfortunately, I think it was a little bit out of their comfort zone. So we ended up with 5 half-built desks. So my wonderful husband came in on the weekend and finished those off, thankfully. So we have got 6 fully functional desks, which is good. But we're just going through the final phases of setup at the moment. So yeah.
Sounds like a wonderful Father's Day present there for your husband having to get the Allen key out and having some construction required.
Yeah, it was certainly not how I planned to spend the Father's Day weekend, that's for sure. But today we have another guest in the studio with us, and we are welcoming Mark Andersen, the founder and visionary behind Andersen IT, celebrating a massive milestone this year with 25 years in business. Brisbane. So Mark founded Andersen IT to help businesses grow smarter, not just faster. And when he started the business back in 2000, it was all about sticking servers in a rack. Whereas today we're seeing Andersen IT delivering more strategic, intelligent partnerships to give customers infrastructure, cloud, and cybersecurity with confidence. Uh, he has a guiding mantra, and that is practical empowerment. So stabilize your core and build trust that lasts. Mark, welcome to Two Sides of the Table.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Talk to us about Andersen IT. The business is 25 years old this year. That is
Yes.
quite a milestone.
It does sneak up on you, like most things. Back in 2000, for those of you who might remember it, there was a dot-com bubble that burst. And there was a lot of us who were in organizations that sort of evaporated or got bought out or whatever it is, and we all had to work out what we were going to do with ourselves. I'd come from a background, my family had owned and run a small business.
So you knew what to do.
Well, it wasn't scary. The concept
Yeah.
of it wasn't scary. I kind of knew sort of how it had to be done. I witnessed some of the sales side of things, some of the account side of things. I sort of had a bit of a foundation. So the idea of actually starting a small business wasn't crazy, but in hindsight, it's things you do when you're young and crazy. From there, my vision really then was there was not many people who were providing purely services. Everyone was either looking to drop a box and work out how to deal with that after that. I took the complete opposite approach, so much so that I actually, for the first 15 years of business, I didn't sell a single piece of hardware or software or anything, or purely services. So yeah, from that, we just built a professional services business, consulting, managed services sort of came into it more and more. We sort of came into managed services. We didn't start with managed services. And then from there, we've sort of just built our relationships with businesses of all different industries, different sizes. Most of our clients are a fairly like medium to large size.
Mhm.
And we work with their teams, their internal teams, to help sort of give them additional capability or fill capability or just help them on that journey, really. So and that hasn't really changed. The technology's changed. You have to try and keep on top of things. You have to reinvent yourself every 5 years. That's sort of what I look back on. And yeah, that's been us.
Yeah, and I think the amazing thing about your business, Mark, is how you've managed to stay evergreen. Like if I remember back to the year 2000, it was sort of NT4 was the flavour of the month and a cloud was something in the sky and security was really changing a password and nothing more than that. And, if you think back, like what are some of those changes that you've seen that have been really, instrumental for your business?
Look, I think for us, being able to focus on particular areas and do that really, really well, but then also always have that eye on the next thing. You can't, if you sort of double down too much, you get too focused on one thing or one industry or whatever. In my experience, you may as well write your bankruptcy papers at the same time.
Wow.
We found that very much so. Back in 2007, 2008, when GFC happened, we had a lot of other organizations like ourselves who were very, very focused on resources. And all those dollars just dried up and they evaporated. But we had enough of a spread around logistics, retail, healthcare, that it hurt because that, resources was where a lot of the money was, but it didn't put us out of business. What we've also found is that a lot of the key technologies are the same in all organizations. All organizations are IT businesses in their own way, just delivering or producing different products. So we've always tried to focus on, well, what is that commonality and what we do that we can then pick that up and go somewhere else and somewhere else and somewhere else. You don't necessarily have to have the same offering for every client. You just have to have enough of an in and then you expand. And that's been the secret of what that's the thing that we've learned most is just being able to have those key bits of ins to clients and then being able to leverage that to do more.
I love that because I think there are a lot of IT service providers that think they want the customer to buy the whole remit, right? They want them to buy the whole technology stack, the whole managed service. Otherwise, they're not that interested. Whereas you've taken almost the opposite, where if you get a consulting gig or you get a professional services project, that's your in. It's your way
Mm.
to prove yourself, and that is so true with so many. I
Yeah,
think that's an opportunity for so many technology service providers.
very rarely do we get a managed services
Mm,
engagement on day one.
yeah,
We had one. We had one last month, and it was just very unusual because
yeah.
normally we're already in there. We sort of know the environment, we know the people, but this was we just won it, and we're sort of going from there. And it's a very different onboarding experience in that situation. But what we find is that we do come into environments that they've already made, and look, these are organisations with hundreds of people. They've got an IT department. They've got established relationships. They've made technology decisions. If you walk in there and say, "Okay, throw all that out,"
Yeah.
you and just replace it with what we think you should do, it's a hard thing to argue, really. So quite often over time, we might lead clients to certain technologies or certain pathways based on our advice, but it's very hard on day one to rip and replace, I found. So we don't bother. We just try and work with them, work with what they've got. That can be difficult from a skilling perspective internally. Um, but yeah, that's when you try and focus on getting the right people in your team who can be very flexible and have enough of a core capability that they can adjust slightly to do something else that's similar.
I think that's a great strategy, and obviously one of the reasons you've been so successful because I think often people get caught up in the MSP playbook, and that MSP playbook is we only want managed services customers. We don't want any other project work or any other, time and materials type work. Everything needs to be solely focused on manage. And I've always thought, business is a bit like personal relationships. You typically don't consummate the marriage on the first date. You need to build up that relationship and trust over time. And delivering those project pieces of work allows you to then build up that relationship to then move from what might be a piecemeal activity into the nirvana that everyone's trying to achieve with reoccurring revenue and managed services. So.
Well, it's I mean, we talk about trust all the time, but there is a trust in that people are giving you access to an environment that if you do something wrong, 1,000 people don't have a job. And that is that weighs upon you, and you have to approach it with care and how you well, look, I mean, we've got a very, very robust change management process that we apply to all our customers. And for us, that's actually a competitive advantage. We had one client who we picked up because we started doing a couple of little bits and pieces, and we started throwing change approvals to them. And they're going, our current people don't do that. I don't know what they're doing. But it's also the flip side. You do. We've had experiences where we've had clients where this is the early days where we thought our job was just to keep out of the way, keep things running, be invisible a bit. You get no credit for that. You get to the renewal time and they go, well, what do you do for us?
Yeah, that's
And you can show them the lists of tickets and all that sort of stuff. But if they don't see it on a continual basis, it's almost like they don't believe it. So for us, having these sort of continual touch points from I guess change is one way, but it's another form of marketing what we do to our clients, and that just builds that trust, that confidence. But yeah, just trying to get that first engagement is always look. It's a long. One thing I've learned over 25 years is that you've got to be patient. If you can be patient and play a long game, it always pays off.
yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree.
Mm.
Um, does that sort of feed into you guys have got a really structured framework where it's plan, deliver, sustain. Is that sort of what you've been building the business around for the last couple of years? I suppose it probably wasn't like that when you first started the business. Is that?
No, 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 no. The business started in a garage, like all good businesses
Love
do.
that.
And it was literally. Um, Look, I think I mean, previously to starting the business, I worked in enterprise environments
Yeah.
anyway, so you kind of come with that mindset, that methodology. So you have to plan everything. Um, uh, Delivery is just a given. You have
Yeah.
to do it. You have to say what you're going to do. And then the sustain is really, well, you've got this. You don't want to just throw it over the fence. And, a good consultant's always planning what their next engagement is, as part of that, and then you just roll through. And then it's just a way of sort of crystallizing for ourselves and for our clients that, we're really focused on these three parts of working with you in your organization.
It's about plugging that leaky bucket, right? Like you don't want to go to all this work to win the customer and deliver, great results only to have them leave because you haven't, reported correctly or you haven't stayed in touch or you haven't engaged with them. I think there's so much value in
Mm.
Mark picking up the phone and calling the customer and going, how's things going? Or
Yeah.
who whatever your process is internally, I think it's about plugging that leaky bucket so you don't do all this work to win them only for them to walk out the door 12 months later.
No, no. Sometimes your biggest challenge is when you've got a client who's very self sufficient.
Mhm.
So you deliver a great project for them,
Yeah.
and they go, "Yep, great, we've got it from here,"
Yeah.
and it's just like, ah,
Damn.
and it. But I find that less of an issue these days because internal resourcing in IT departments isn't what it used to be. So they're stretched.
Yeah.
I've got one client who the new fellow who is managing their IT a month ago was the third in line. So number one went, number two worked out that this is not what he wanted to do. He left, and it's all come down to him, and they're not replacing the roles. So it's a real struggle for him. Um, and so all we can do is offer to help make things a bit easier for him. And just know that if we can do that and sort of help out with over the time, and if he doesn't leave too, then it'll pay off for us as well. There's a lot of hand holding. There's a lot of that sort of, we're here to help you. We're here to support you. It may not turn into anything tomorrow, but it will in 6 months, 12 months. And it's based, our customers, we've had for some of them for literally decades
Yeah.
because we've taken that very long-term approach. Look, we're here to make money. We don't necessarily want to make it today, but we will make it over time. We're not here to extract. We're here to help.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's,
And even I think as well, like those people that have had a good experience with you, even if they do leave, they'll take you with them wherever they go.
We try.
Yeah.
We try to keep as close as we can, and they leave, they go somewhere else, and we give them a couple of days to get their feet on the table, and then bang, straight on the
Yeah.
phone. How's it going?
Yeah.
Let's go for lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. Awesome.
um,
And I think that's often what makes businesses successful is that, people move around, whether they're an executive or a CIO or whoever might be. And I think one of the things that's quite unique about your business, Mark, is that you take an enterprise approach and you apply that not only to your enterprise customers, but also to your mid-market as well as your SMB customers as well. So building those frameworks and methodologies
mm.
around that.
Look, I think it becomes very difficult to take some of those things and then apply it at an SMB level and still maintain profitability. That's one of the biggest challenges. Because you like to overservice, you like to provide a very bespoke service, but that's hard to scale at a smaller level, and it becomes much more price focused at SMB level and that sort of stuff. Look, the only way you can really deal with that is through a lot of integration and a lot of automation. If you're not building on that from day one, and it becomes part of the culture. If I'm not interested in getting any software platform or anything that doesn't already talk to something else within the ecosystem that we have. And once we've done that, then that feeds to that it just makes the effort to deliver on a service much lower than it otherwise would be. I think we run probably a fairly lean team for what we do, for the size of the clients we have and the amount of work we do. But we've only been able to do that by having a huge amount of focus on that integration and automation. But it's a never-ending thing. It's like, oh, what else can we do? What else can we do? So.
Yeah.
And you pull on an interesting thread, and I think every technology business on the planet today is really think about automation in order to be able to drive efficiency, improve the customer experience, etc. How do you think about automation in your business as part of your continual improvement process?
Look, I try and identify what are the things that we do on a continual basis, and what can we do to not do that. Now that can be, you look at like ticket counts, for example. That's a fairly standard sort of model for that. But you also look at your sales process. Now we found so we implemented HubSpot, and it was great, but the integration with it, we also use Autotask for our PSA and everything. The integration between those two was kind of non-existent, and we spent, I reckon, a year and through a couple of different organizations trying to get that integration right, to the point where it was, do I throw out HubSpot because I can't get it to integrate? I like the product, but unless it's doing what I need to do, it becomes an effort to keep it going. Eventually, we actually found a mob out of the UK who, it just works. They did it. It just works. I just pay the bill every month, no drama, and it's such so you have to work hard at it, but you also have to know when to cut your losses,
Love that.
because platforms are great, but if they're not working for you, you're working for them, then it's not. It's a waste of time.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it sounds like the approach that you've taken is very much a best of breed approach rather than trying to then have one platform to rule them all.
There's no such thing. There's no such thing. They're all compromises in their own way. Some things do some stuff really well. Others like, yes, we can do it, but is it actually driving any improvement in the business and how we engage with our clients and that sort of stuff? And that's, so that's why integration has been the biggest thing for us over the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, wow.
So,
That long.
yeah. So, no, we've been, well, I think it's 11 years now we've been with Autotask for our PSA. And it's just been this focus on what else can we get it to talk to? What else can we get it to talk to all that time? And you look back and you go, oh, I'd hate to start this from scratch again.
Do you have someone dedicated to looking at that, or is it sort of a shared responsibility in your team?
It's sort of shared with so I've got like an executive management group,
Yeah.
with different heads of the different departments, and we all have a focus on what can we do to improve what we do all the time on a continual basis. And but some people have a real affinity to that sort of stuff. So you let them go with that.
Absolutely.
You go, yep, no, you want to do that? Go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it's one of those things you go, oh, geez, this is taking a lot of time and effort. But once it's done, you don't even think about that. It's like, oh, this is so good.
Yeah, never have to think about it again.
Yeah. So you're always having to look at, well, what can we do to extend our platforms to do our job better, to give a better, experience for our customers, for our team, just make life easier. And that's really allowed us to really operate on a much more leaner basis from a resourcing perspective than we otherwise would be able to. We just couldn't do it otherwise.
And so, with the experience that you've got, sort of having worked with integration and automation for so long, how are you thinking about AI in your business and what the impact that will have moving forward?
Um, I think it's also another one of those efficiency plays. Um, you part of AI and trying to get the most out of AI is having that bit of that imagination about what you can actually do about it, because every product these days you have, every SaaS platform has an AI thing. They almost need to
They
have it, I
rolled in
think.
the AI glitter, I think,
Oh
sometimes.
yeah, like you look at it and go, oh yeah, that's useful,
Yeah.
but it's useful within its own bubble. And that one's got its own little thing, and that one's got its own little thing. Whereas the trying to get trying to challenge people within the organizations to try and think outside of what they do to start using AI. Now, it may not always work. Like one I suggested the other day, it's like, well, let's we get the team to do planning for like proposals. Here's the list of tasks, here's the effort, that sort of stuff. I said, let's just start sort of doing a bit of a check on that. Let's get those lists of tasks. Let's throw it into like a Copilot, for example, and see what it says and see what it sees the risks and assumptions and that sort of stuff, and try and sort of and if we're sort of taking time to get quotes out because we're asking the team to do a bit of a pre-sales activity, and that's taking time, and means that the delivery of the quote to the client is taking longer. If the AI can do it and give an effort estimate that was within, let's just say even 10% of what the team are putting together on a continual basis, then let's just do that.
Yeah.
I
But
really like that approach about that continual refinement, and I think that's the key with automation. Is it's not a once off; it's a continual
oh,
improvement.
yeah,
But I think a little tip for players along at home that I did with ChatGPT the other day is I actually took our digital team proposal and popped it into ChatGPT, and then got it to ask the question, what are the questions that customers might have about this proposal, to just refine that and making sure that we're covering that. And I think that's another tool set and another lens to be able to look over what you're doing and provide, almost the independent advice and expertise.
yeah. I think I find that one of the hardest things working in this, I guess, this MSP TSP world is that people don't necessarily talk to each other. Getting that peer advice. What are you doing? How are you doing this? How are you doing that? Some people are more open than others.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty open. If someone asks me a question, I'll just tell them how we do it, because I know that that's not information that's going to lose me lose me a deal or
Of
something like
course
that.
not.
No,
Yeah.
but some people, they're very reticent because they think, oh,
100%. Yeah.
I'm not going to share. I'm not going to talk because I don't want you.
To steal something.
Yeah, and it's like, what I've found is that there's very few new ideas. There's people tend to relearn things that have been around, whether it's around business management, whether it's around anything like that. People tend to relearn things that they've never heard about, but people have known for decades. So I find that if I have to, like, so that's why things like AI it's almost like a peer that you can get to review something and maybe ask you questions back that you may not have thought about. And particularly if you're leading a business, and you've got that experience, you can ask the questions of the team, but they may not know an answer to give you. Because they come from a different background, different perspective. So sometimes just being able to ask an artificial peer, a question can help crystallize some ideas in your own head. You don't necessarily blindly follow it, but it helps sort of just
Yeah,
ask you.
differently.
You ask additional questions of
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. I think it's important, you sort of the point that you touch on about that open sharing, because I think often organizations think they're quite unique and that, they've got that secret sauce. But I think, the analogy I often use is I look at fried chicken. I love a bit of fried chicken and, you've got your KFC, you've got your Nando's and you've got your Bell's hot chicken. They're all selling fried chicken, but they do it very uniquely. And I think, really that's about building out that go-to-market piece as opposed to, well, we're all using the same products and doing it the same way, but we've got a particular methodology. And I think one of the things that's quite unique for you, Mark, is you're actually agnostic in regards to your technology stack and the vendors that you work with, which is quite unique in the IT industry. I'd love to hear a little bit more about why you've gone that path and how that's been successful for you.
Um, I look. I made the comment before. When you come into a client, they've made their own technology decisions, and they could be running. They could be running some HPE gear, or they could be running a backup platform that we've done some work with, but we're not sort of doing all the time. As I said, you can walk in there and just go, well, I don't want to know about that. I'm not going to take the opportunity to try and work with you on that platform and help it work for you, that sort of stuff. So that's why we take that approach. We go, well, we can't. Sometimes the life cycles on these platforms are, particularly when you've got data protection, can be decades. They're not going to throw it out. So you just accept that, okay, well, we need to run with it. We have to help the client run this environment. So for me, that's an opportunity to build some capability, but also a revenue stream that we can then potentially leverage somewhere else and open up doors elsewhere. Yeah, I got some advice, a very long time ago when, in the early days when, someone was suggesting I become like an IBM business partner. And eventually I did, but on the hardware side, and they were very stringent around quotas and that sort of stuff. And someone says, you sign it and you're tied to them. And if you go off and you base your whole business, and if you want to go anywhere else, they can cut you off. And if the vendor cuts you off and you've devoted everything to that vendor, then if you're relying upon, and that's the other thing is like, I've never relied upon another partner for my own business success.
Yeah.
I use them as partners, but I don't rely upon them for business, for revenue streams, whether it's the vendor. And we actually do a lot of work with other MSPs. They come to us. They say, look, we need certain capability. You guys have it. We just need it, or we don't either have it, or our team's fully booked. Can you help us do that? And that's again a trust based relationship. But if you depend upon that, and one day they say, no, we're going to take it all in house, or we're not going to give you any more business, that sort of stuff, that can blow a massive hole in your whole revenue stream.
Yeah.
And at which point you go, well, okay, what do I do now? So being agnostic, and that's agnostic around industry. I come back to that GFC resources comment earlier that we've seen it with. We've had it with retail. We've had it with health. Even healthcare now can be a bit up and down. You think you would have banked everything on healthcare, that being just, but budgets budgets
Yeah.
change. And you are potentially, as the external provider, the one left holding the bag a little bit. You've resourced up to help deliver on a bunch of work for a client, and then they go, no, we can't do that anymore because they've just delivered the budget and you can't do it. So that's why, from an industry and from a technology perspective, we've tried to be now. There's a trade-off. You probably don't open yourself up for as much growth, and I acknowledge that. But the trade-off is longevity and stability.
Yeah.
So that's it. So it's a decision that everyone who runs these businesses have to make. It's like, well, what do you want to achieve? Where are you trying to grow? How are you going to try to grow? And are you looking to have that sort of rapid growth and then make some decisions about your future, or do you want to be able to have a business for the long term, and build in a huge amount of redundancy and resiliency in that. And that's been my strategy.
Yeah.
Not going to work for everyone, but that's been my strategy. So,
Yeah,
and here I am.
So obviously the IT industry is probably very different to when you first started the business. What what's been your biggest challenges in both, I suppose, in the business side, but also working in the IT industry, like during that 25 years? You've sort of touched on a few already.
Yeah. I think the people you deal with are very different.
Yeah.
When we first started, the people we were dealing with had been like there wasn't as much IT in organisations.
Hmm.
That's the truth. I mean, you may have had a email server if you're lucky, and you might have a file server. Some places had databases, but other places didn't. There could have been that you know, Unix box sitting in the corner that
Yeah.
ran the whole business. That's the sort of thing. It was a very different. We had clients who still had those old green screens. It's very different. Why? Yeah, but technology now is in everything in the business. So it becomes, but the people within organizations to help manage that hasn't grown. So businesses are looking to try and do more with less. So for us, we came in and we went, okay, we can. Oh, the other big one is that 24/7 wasn't really a thing 25 years ago. Um, people would go home and then they come to work the next day, and if you turn something off at 5 o'clock, no one cared.
Hmm.
So the ability to do anything within a reasonable time frame, and if something went down for an hour, they went, oh yeah, even half a day. Sometimes
It'll
people
come
went,
back.
oh, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. So that urgency and that availability has been the biggest change within organisations over that time. Mind you, occasionally we see a client and they said, oh, no, we can turn it off at 6 o'clock, and I was going, really? Yeah. I was like, it's a shock now when you have clients who don't run that like that. So it's probably infested is the wrong word, but it's technology has just grown its tentacles to all parts of the business. Um, we have clients who need something open or running on a Sunday morning at 7 a.m. because someone wants to do some printing or something like that. Lawyers, for example. So that's for me is that urgency and that availability has been the biggest change over the 25 years.
And how's that influenced how you've shaped the business over that time?
Well, we didn't need to worry about. I mean, we've always provided a 24/7 on-call service throughout the whole period of the
Was it
business.
you in the beginning?
Oh yeah, yeah. There was no holidays and no sleep for a long time. But that's what you do when you're starting a business. So we've always had that, but it was extremely rare that people would actually use it. It was like an insurance policy. They need to know that they could pick the phone up and
Mhm.
you'd respond, and that would be fine. But now, I think it was when we first started working with environments with databases, and we would then have to start doing monitoring of them. And once you start down the monitoring path, everything changes
Mhm.
because alerts come through in the middle of the night. And you go, oh, I've got to respond to that, and that changes the whole kind of mindset about responsiveness and availability and on call, and how do you manage that with your team, because you really can't do it all one person. We shouldn't. And how do you spread that load? What's equitable? And so yeah, that's for me, that's sort of the change from the availability side of things. So.
Yeah, and I think that's a challenge that many founders face is, they start the business because they're great at IT skills. All of a sudden they, decide that they're going to open up an MSP and it's just them in the garage or the spare bedroom, wherever it might be. And sort of reminds me of a conversation I had with a potential customer earlier today that was exactly that same situation. But for him, he really didn't know what to do next, like how to go from one person to two people to three people. Is there any tips or tricks that you've got that you found to sort of
Yeah.
accelerate through that from one to many?
Look, I it was just me for the first 12 months. working out all the how to do everything and everything else. And eventually I found it wasn't so much there wasn't enough hours in the day. I just couldn't be in two places at once.
Mhm.
That was really that was the moment that I went, okay, I need to get someone. I actually went and I actually got two people because I went, oh, well, look, I got one guy who had all the skills I needed, and I got another guy who was a graduate who was, you know, quite switched on. The guy who had all the skills, he was gone in 6 months.
Yeah.
And the guy who's a graduate, he's still with me.
25 years later.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's so sometimes, yeah, I mean, from a hiring perspective, it's a gut feel as much as anything else.
Especially at that level.
But yeah, for me, it was that really, yeah, if you can't be in two places at once, and it's a bit of a trap though, because as soon as you hire someone, then you've got to keep yourself busy and you've got to keep them busy.
Yeah.
So now you've really got like an additional sales role on top of what you were normally doing. So you have to prepare for that. And so, yeah, so you're then working. If you think hiring people is going to make your job easier, no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
But it changes what you do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's important because I think, as you bring in additional team members, it frees you up as that founder to spend more time with customers, to have those sales conversations, to start to build that pipeline. And, I think a lot of people aren't necessarily prepared for that shift of moving from being that technician to all of a sudden, well, I'm now a BDM and an account manager and a marketing manager and wearing all of those hats, not just the technician.
I think as well, people who generally start these businesses, again, you said, like they like working in technology is their chosen profession. Like they may have grown up with it. They love, playing with the technology, breaking stuff, fixing stuff, that sort of stuff. And I think that's part of the thing that makes it difficult later on when they're growing and they've sort of got to step away from that stuff because you're actually asking someone to stop doing what they love.
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing, and that's why, and I'm guilty of this as well. You can slide back, fall back into some of these things. You step in, you try and let people do the thing, but occasionally you step in because you go, I'm sitting here, I know the answer, I know how to fix this, and you step in to show people how to do it, but you can't. It's very difficult to cut off what you do. You ask someone who loves to play music to stop playing music.
Yeah.
Because they've got to work. They've got to do their other job, and they're not going to be happy with that. And that's always the balance when you've got I think particularly founder led businesses who have come from who are real propeller heads. It's what they love, and asking them to stop doing it is the hardest thing of all. And yeah, it's something I still struggle.
Oh, I'm the same, right? We followed the same sort of methodology with Inception that we hire, graduates or people that are still studying to help sort of do that, I suppose, that technical stuff. Like it's the sending the emails and the posting the social media for clients and things like that. That's the stuff that I love doing as well. And often at night you'll find me in HubSpot having a play around just because I need to get that fixed. But it's nothing necessarily for a customer. It's probably more for Inception that I'm having a play around with. And it's the same thing, I think. You are asking someone to sort of go and do a different role than, and I think the success really comes from being able to step into those new shoes as the business grows.
Yeah.
I thought I was the only one that went back to my roots. I remember being CEO at MOQ, and one of the things I was struggling with was to get access to data, and I'm a SQL guy from way back. So, I just opened up Management Studio and just started querying some databases, and one of the help desk guys comes around and says, you don't often see a CEO in Management Studio there. So I'm glad it's not just me that sometimes likes to get back to my roots.
Yeah, yeah. Look, and you do find other things you enjoy doing. There's a certain perverse pleasure of clicking send on invoices.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. But I've sort of stepped back from a lot of those because there's someone else in the business and she loves it just as much as I do. So I know,
Yeah,
uh,
you've got to let someone else have the
you
dopamine
do,
hit.
you do. But I always found that that's like, because that's really that's the result of all the hard work that you've done. And you're going, okay. And you have a real finger on the pulse of what's going on, but then you just know it's like, okay, it's that final step of, okay, a job well done, bang,
Yeah.
send. And it's like, yeah, so it's a little bit of that drawing a line under things, but it's in a good way. So,
I think you've got to let your staff as well have that dopamine hit so they get that satisfaction out of what
mm,
they're doing. I think you can't have it all, right? So I think there's a power in letting the team, run with what they're good at.
yeah, it's a very much a conscious choice to devolve, certain activities that
Yeah.
you do. It's a very conscious, because it's just easy. Sometimes you go, yeah, it's easier if I just do it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Um, and it is, but that's time that you could be doing something else. Yeah,
Yeah. Growing the business.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I mean, there's always something else to do.
That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
I
always something.
always think that, as soon as you say, I should just do it myself, probably means there's a process that needs to be documented to be able to then share that with others. But Mark, your tagline for your business is, built on decades of experience and, 25 years in business, but also team members that have been with you for that journey as well. If someone's just starting out or maybe just a couple of years in their sort of their IT careers, building their business, whether that's an MSP or a VAR or a TSP, what's the one tip that you would have for them based on your experience?
Um, I'll get ready for no sleep. That would be the first thing. No, in all seriousness, it's about, as I said, try and take a longer term view of things if you can. Be prepared to be there for the long haul. Um, we 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 sign agreements with suppliers that can be multi years, and we try and get our clients to do stuff for multi years. It doesn't necessarily happen. Some clients only want to go year by year, but if you back yourself to go, okay, that's fine. We'll get them in a year. We'll
Yeah.
get them in a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that as an opportunity to grow what you offer and as a conversation. So don't think about, I need to extract as much as I can out of this client, because what happens is they will squeal,
They
and
see that.
they will not, they'll know what's happening, and then they'll pull right back and you'll lose it. So if you can, I mean, it's all well and good to say take a long term view when you've got bills to pay, you know. But I would also be laser like focused on what you are spending on your business. There is some stuff that is nice to have, and there's stuff that's absolutely necessary, and that would be, you've got to look at both the revenue side and the expenditure side. Your resourcing, if it's just yourself, it's fine. You can do whatever you want. But as soon as you start looking at additional people, it's a hard thing these days. Resourcing is a real challenge. So I don't envy anyone getting started and trying to build a team from scratch. That would be scary now compared to, I think, what it was like previously. Even 10 years ago, it's changed a lot. So yeah, the one tip, as I said, just try and take as long-term view of the relationships, because they will pay off.
Yeah.
Look, I think that's a great piece of advice, just being patient, because I think as business owners and humans, we're always wanting to go faster and harder. But, what I'm hearing, some of your success, Mark, is, just thinking about the long game. And I think that's a great tip for listeners to take away.
I agree. I think that's great advice, and not something I've really heard, recently. I think it's been grow, 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 grow. When, I think your view is maybe not don't do that, but just think about what type of relationships you're trying to build.
Well, you got to grow, otherwise you're going backwards.
Yeah, that's it.
That's the reality. But you have to make a choice about what business you want to have and what to run.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much, Mark. That was a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. If folks need to get in contact with you, or if they're interested in talking to you, how can they get in touch?
Look, just hit the website, andersenit.com.au, andersenit.com.au. But I've also got the SON because,
Yeah.
everyone does it. So, yeah.
Perfect.
No, just hit the website. There's contact us forms. It tells you a bit about what we do, the clients we have, a bit about the team and our experience. So, yeah,
Fabulous. And Pete, thank you for joining me on the other side of the table.
Yeah, thanks, Kayla. And Mark, once again, appreciate the generosity in sharing all of those insights of what's been an amazing business journey over 25 years.
Thank you.